Hello, everybody. I'm Sarah Penner, and I'm thrilled to be sharing my research with you all today. I'm a sophomore at Southern Utah University, and I've been employed as a tutor at our writing center for the last 2 semesters. Working as a tutor has been extremely educational, and I've recently had the opportunity to take some of the things that I've learned, synthesize them into an opportunity for further research, conduct that research, and inform you of the benefits of collaboration between speech and writing centers on university campuses. Before I present my data, I'd like to provide you with a little background information. Why do I care about collaboration between speech and writing centers? Well, we're going to take it way back. As I was registering for classes for my final semester in high school, I realized that I had an open class period for another extracurricular. After a lot of consideration, I eventually decided on speech and debate. Despite having no prior experience with public speaking, I was excited at the prospect of starting something new. As I began competing at tournaments, I realized something profound that impacts my life even more now than it did back then. The opportunity to strengthen my public speaking skills has had a tremendous positive influence on my capability to communicate effectively through writing. The more public speaking I engaged in, the more confident I felt in both my speaking and writing skills. And that is exactly the point of the research project that I've conducted over the last few months. My intent was to showcase the strength of the relationship between writing and speaking, and to implement a collaboration between learning centers at the university level that utilizes such a relationship. Writing and speaking are intrinsically connected, but despite sharing foundational theories, there has been relatively little research conducted on the connection between the two. Given my prior experience with public speaking and writing, I felt inspired to conduct a research project that would analyze and showcase the connection between speaking and writing. Using Southern Utah University's Writing Center and Speech and Presentation Center as my focus, I have collected data that showcases a mutually beneficial relationship between two learning communities, further strengthening our centers at Southern Utah University and assisting the student body that we serve through eventual combined training, shared marketing, and mutual observation. I have noticed a theme of change throughout the entire process of this research project. As a senior in high school, starting speech and debate changed a lot of things in my life. I began to transition to exercising my intellectual skills instead of only focusing on my creative talents. I changed as a student as I felt my capabilities in both speaking and writing increase, and I felt myself become more confident in my interpersonal skills as I used my voice to advocate for things I believed in. This change in myself is something that I hope to also see positively affect the learning communities at SUU that I've centered my research project on. The theme of change has also been extremely prevalent in the connection between speaking and writing itself. As evidenced in the interviews conducted, which we'll take a look at later, the content of an individual's writing undergoes a process of change as it transitions to a public speaking format, and vice versa. A speech must change in order to better fit into a written format. What sounds engaging on paper isn't necessarily effective when spoken aloud. It is therefore imperative that such content undergoes said change, and that we as tutors and students are comfortable with the concept of change. Change is the only constant, as they say, and that has been greatly demonstrated throughout the process of this project. So I began my research project, keeping this theme of change in mind. I decided to split my research into two parts: a generalized public survey and a more intimate personal interview. The survey, focusing on personal levels of confidence in writing and speaking, was available to students at Southern Utah University from a variety of grades and disciplines, and I received 58 responses from which to derive data. The interviews, conducted by myself and aimed at exposing personal opinions and perspectives of Learning Center tutors, were done with the assistance of employees of both SUU's Writing Center and Speech and Presentation Center. I had the opportunity to interview 3 individuals on the connection between speaking and writing. The survey yielded riveting results. Focused primarily on assessing students' confidence in writing and speaking, I was able to see that the connection between the two was not only important to me, but also to students all across campus. As seen in our first 2 pie charts, the results of the survey applied to SUU students in all 4 years of their education, as well as students from a variety of disciplines. Writing and speaking are universal. Whether you're using those skills for theater, psychology, nursing, or anything else, it's all the same and it's all important. Increasing students' ability to write and speak is imperative to an upper level education, and this survey truly demonstrated that importance. The final pie chart, as seen here, simply informs us of which participants already had intimate knowledge on either writing or speaking, as they are employed by one of the two learning centers analyzed in the study. The first bar graph informs us of something similar, as it displays the familiarity participants may have had due to attending a tutoring session at either the writing center or the speech and presentation center. Overall, these graphs are aimed at helping us further understand the demographic of those involved in the study, as well as exposing possible biases due to previous experience with the learning centers at SUU. We then move into the data analyzing students' confidence levels in both writing and public speaking. As seen in our second bar graph here, most university students feel moderately confident in their writing. The next chart, however, showcases something extremely prevalent. While the majority of the students participating in the survey do feel moderately confident in public speaking, there is a greater number of students who feel more uncomfortable in public speaking than they do in writing. The significance of this lies in the proposed collaboration between the Speech and Presentation Center and the Writing Center. As students increase their writing abilities by attending a session at the Writing Center, they will also be exposed to opportunities to increase their speaking abilities through the assistance of the Speech and Presentation Center. The benefits of a collaboration between the two learning centers at SUU is further explored in the following interviews. The purpose of these interviews was to gather qualitative data in addition to the quantitative data provided by the survey. Participants were chosen from employees of SUU's Writing Center and SUU's Speech and Presentation Center, and interviews were conducted after participants from one center had recently attended a tutoring session at the other. Hearing the personal opinions and experiences of those intimately familiar with the world of writing and speaking due to their employment further showcased the connection between writing and speaking and cemented my ideas for collaboration between SUU's learning centers. Let's take a look at the interviews.
I wouldn't say that it strengthened my thoughts on it just because I already really believe that, but it definitely reinforced it.
Okay.
It's nice to have those reminders sometimes that things can be better and how connected speech and writing really.
I definitely think, or at least understand, that there's a bigger connection than I thought before. If only because in both the Writing Center and in the Speech and Presentation Center, I mean, I knew this before, but I guess this just kind of like cemented it. It is important to communicate clearly, and it's important to communicate like we talk in writing stuff all the time when you're writing a paper, when you're in classes, the rhetorical triangle, right? Ethos, pathos, and logos. And when I was there, I could really see how that like applied to oral communication as well. And I understood why it was so important, but on like an even larger scale.
I would definitely say throughout it, and like after talking with the intern there, I understood the connection more. I did the video presentation with Jack. It was both of us were presenting on it, and we were just reading off of the slides and basically communicating what we wanted to say. And the tutor that we were working with asked us if we were using cue cards, and we were like, no, we're just going off of our memory, like what we remembered we wanted to say about each of those. But I was like, why didn't we use cue cards? Like having things written down in ways that make sense to you sometimes make your speech. It like would have made me feel more confident in what I was like remembering what I wanted to say, and also probably would have like made me feel like I was backing myself up a little bit more by like having things written down makes them more tangible and like more of like an accessible resource rather than just like trying to remember what you're trying to present and what your ideas are. So I think after she mentioned that, I think I realized that I could have utilized writing more in my preparation for my public presentation.
Cool.
This interview snippet analyzes the existence of a connection between writing and speaking. When asked about such a connection before attending their session, the participants reported feeling unsure about the strength of a relationship between writing and speaking. After attending a session at a learning center, however, the participants were able to identify a stronger connection between writing and speaking as they experienced it personally in their sessions.
I actually adapted an essay recently to be a speech to help someone's capstone project. And I realized that a lot of the things that sound good in writing do not sound good when you speak it.
Right.
So I took a lot out, probably almost half of the essay I took out, just because it doesn't sound interesting. But I think that's really the only thing that I've had to deal with, is just kind of sometimes rewording things so that it sounds more interesting than it does when you read it.
Definitely, yes, for a couple of reasons. One, when I'm speaking, and giving a presentation or just talking to a room, whether it's a professional or context or like I'm hanging out with a group of friends, I definitely change my tone to fit that situation. Which, I mean, you do in writing, right? Tone is a huge part of writing. But when it's a presentation or talking amongst friends or whatever, you can read the situation. We always talk about audience in writing and knowing your audience and knowing how to cater to their needs. But when it's a presentation like this, you can literally see your audience, and so you can change whatever you're saying to fit their needs as the conversation is going. So, and a lot of times, and we talked about this in my appointment as well, that you don't say verbatim your presentation. You have some notes, but mainly you just practice it. And I think the reason you do that is so that you can be fluid, so you can hit on some things that people are understanding, change some other parts. So I think that would be the biggest change. Writing is a lot more static than the oral part of it.
This video reflects on the change that occurs as content transitions from writing to speaking and vice versa. Ashton specifically analyzed a project that he recently worked on as he transitioned a speech to a paper format and shared the things that he learned throughout the process.
I definitely think that it would be beneficial for everyone. I value learning and knowledge very highly, and I think that in my experience of coming here to the Speech and Presentation Center and going to the Writing Center, I've learned a lot. And in reality, the things are so connected that if you need help with a speech, you could go to the Writing Center and still get help. Or if you need help with an essay, you could come here and you'd still learn something new.
Right.
I think it would be better for everybody.
Because, as we said before, we're working on communication, which is huge. Number two, we're in a unique position where we're working directly with students, and for the most part, we are students ourselves. So I definitely think that brings a different level into it, that I think that we could cover a lot of the same bases in training. And also because I think it would be good just for exposure for both communities to understand that the other one exists. Because that's something huge in the Writing Center, is a lot of times when people bring in a resume to me, I'm like, oh, there's a career center. You could, after you take it here to the Writing Center, run it over to the Career Center. I think it would be super beneficial to have that same communication and same relationship with the Speech and Presentation Center, especially in a world that's becoming more and more technology based, if that makes sense. I think that as so many things are going to be done through writing and through presentations and through things like we're doing right now, like a Zoom call.
Right.
So I think it would be super important for us to understand that those two worlds exist and that they can benefit from one another.
I would say definitely, just because I think there's a lot of crossover in the skill sets of peer tutoring, or any sort of advising where you're really reacting as the reader or the listener. That's the approach that I've taken in my tutoring, is just to look at the paper and respond to it as the reader. I feel like that's the most beneficial. And that was the approach that the intern took with me when I took my presentation to the Speech and Presentation Center, where they're just able to give me an honest response of someone who's unbiased and hasn't been working on it. So I think there's a lot of crossover in that skill set. Even things like I'm preparing the Writing Center's training meeting for this week, and we're talking about like body language and peer tutoring. I feel like there's a ton of crossover that could be applied both in the Writing Center and Speech and Presentation Center, and I'm sure they're training on things that our tutors would benefit from as well. So yeah, I think we would benefit from some sort of collaboration just because we do have a lot of common in like our job description and duty.
I think that.
Finally, we heard from our 3 participants whether or not they believed a collaboration between SUU's Writing Center and Speech and Presentation Center to be beneficial. Kylie specifically mentioned a few ways in which that collaboration could be conducted. As clearly demonstrated in these videos, all 3 tutors reported an increase in seeing a connection between writing and speaking after attending their tutoring sessions. They all noticed ways in which the theme of change applies to transitioning between writing and speaking, or vice versa, and they all advocated for the collaboration between the 2 learning centers as they truly believe such a collaboration to be beneficial. As we analyze the results of the project, we can see that the combining forces of SUU's Writing Center and Speech and Presentation Center would not only benefit the centers themselves, but it can also provide higher quality assistance for the student body. As we work together, tutors can learn teaching skills and tactics from each other, as well as increase their own skills in writing and speaking simultaneously. In addition, combining forces would bring an increased awareness to both learning centers, increasing productivity and enhancing said resources for students on campus. In terms of benefiting the student body, a partnership between the 2 learning centers can help tutors discern which center would be more beneficial when met with a specific assignment, and can therefore increase the specificity of the tutoring provided. In addition, as tutors become more comfortable with public speaking, so will their interpersonal skills increase, therefore creating a more comfortable and friendly atmosphere for the student being tutored. After examining the data provided by the survey and hearing the personal insights of writing and speaking tutors themselves, I believe our final verdict to be crystal clear. Collaboration in whatever form is, in fact, beneficial. But what does that mean for us, and how do we make the most of such a partnership? As we move forward with our findings, in an attempt to better our learning centers at SUU, I propose 3 plans of actions to implement collaboration. My first suggestion is to conduct combined training sessions. Regularly combining Writing Center and Speech and Presentation Center training meetings would allow employees of both learning communities to share insights and ideas on how to better assist the student body of SUU. Secondly, I believe that merging marketing tactics between the 2 learning communities would bring further awareness to each center's purpose and help tailor our assistance to specific assignments brought in by SUU students. Finally, I propose a mutual observation program between tutors, providing opportunities to allow Writing Center tutors to observe speech sessions and vice versa, will provide tutors opportunities to learn from and teach each other. And the information showcased in this research project informs us of the connection between writing and speaking, and exposes what kind of changes are utilized as a writer transitions their content from writing to speaking and vice versa. Implementing such a change and combining forces will be overall beneficial to Southern Utah University's faculty and staff, and will further increase awareness on the connection between speaking and writing as we attempt to assist the student body of SUU. I'd like to thank the employees of SUU's Writing and Speech and Presentation Centers for their involvement with my project, as well as the directors of both learning centers for their support in conducting such a collaboration. Finally, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch my presentation. I truly believe that as we continue to speak of change and strengthen the connection between writing and speaking, we can make the academic world a more productive and exciting place. Thank you.